In the quiet town of Hyannis, life moved slowly, as if time itself paused to rest. Each street, each corner, held the comfort of a peaceful routine. But in a small house at the edge of town, peace had been replaced by something much heavier. 5-year-old Emma lived there with her aging grandparents, ever since her world had fallen apart. Her parents, famous dog trainers known throughout the region, had died suddenly in a tragic accident. Since that terrible day, Emma hadn't spoken a single word. The bright, curious girl she once was had vanished into silence. Her eyes were empty, and her small hands clung to memories of what she had lost. Only 6 German shepherds, trained lovingly by her parents, remained by her side. They weren't just pets. They were her only comfort, always near her, silently protecting the fragile heart of a grieving child. Before the accident, Emma's days were full of joy and noise. Her parents, James and Caroline, had devoted their lives to training service dogs. Emma had grown up to the sounds of barking, firm commands, and the gentle love that filled their home. But that life ended in an instant. The crash left no survivors. Overnight, their warm home turned into a place of deep silence. Emma stopped speaking. No words, no tears, just a quiet that felt too heavy for someone so young. Her grandparents, Margaret and Walter, tried everything to ease her pain. But they were old and grieving too. No matter what they did, Emma's distant look never changed, and her voice never came back. The only ones who seemed to reach her were the 6 dogs her parents had trained so carefully. Each one felt her sadness in its own way. They stayed by her bed at night, followed her quietly around the house, and laid their heads in her lap when she sat unmoving by the window. They didn't ask for attention. They simply stayed, silent, steady, loyal. They were always there, offering comfort to a little girl who felt completely alone. Days became weeks and weeks became months. But no matter how much time passed, Emma stayed locked in her grief. The world outside kept moving, but inside that house, time stood still. For Emma, those 6 dogs weren't just reminders of her parents. They were her lifeline, the last thread connecting her to the world she'd lost. Every morning, before the sun rose over Hyannis, the same quiet moment unfolded. While Margaret and Walter prepared a simple breakfast in the kitchen, 6 loyal dogs waited patiently outside Emma's door. They didn't bark or scratch to be let in. They just waited, calm and faithful. Sometimes Emma would slowly open the door just enough to see them there, their tails gently swaying. Their presence was a quiet reminder. She wasn't alone. Bit by bit, she started sitting with them. She still didn't speak, but she'd rest her hand on their heads, feeling the warmth of their fur. Each dog had its own way of comforting her. Max, the oldest, would press his head against her shoulder. Luna would nudge her with her nose until Emma gave a small smile. They never pushed her, never needed anything, just her company. During those moments, the house felt lighter. Her grandparents noticed the tiny changes, the way her breathing calmed when the dogs were near, the way her eyes softened as they curled up by her feet. For Emma, the dogs were everything. Without words, without pictures, they reminded her of her parents. Every command they followed, every trick they performed, echoed with the voices of her mother and father. But even more than that, they gave Emma what no one else could: steady, silent love. Day after day, they stayed by her side, wrapping her in quiet loyalty, waiting patiently for the little girl they adored to come back to herself. Margaret and Walter did their best to hold things together. Their hands shook now, and their bodies were slower with age, but they put all their strength into making a safe home for Emma. Still, behind closed doors, life grew harder each day. Bills stacked up on the table. Vet visits, dog food, utilities, and their savings were disappearing faster than they could keep up. The 6 German shepherds, as precious as they were, needed care they could barely afford. Late at night, after Emma was asleep, the old couple would sit quietly at the worn-out dining table, the silence between them heavy. Walter would shake his head, his eyes wet with tears he refused to cry. Margaret held her teacup tightly, her heart aching at the thought of what they might soon have to tell Emma. On a cold morning, they finally found the courage to speak. Emma sat by the window, one of the dogs resting its head on her knee. Walter knelt beside her, his voice soft and heavy with emotion. "Sweetheart, we've tried everything, but we might have to find new homes for the dogs." For a moment, Emma didn't move. Her small hand stopped mid-stroke on Max's fur. Then, without saying a word, she stood up, walked past her grandparents, and quietly closed the door to her room behind her. Inside, she curled beneath the covers, her back turned to the world. She wouldn't eat. She didn't come out, not even when the dogs pawed gently at her door. Outside her room, the 6 German shepherds became restless. They paced the hallway, noses pressed against the door, ears twitching as if they understood exactly what had been said. They didn't bark or whine, but their usual calm had turned into something uneasy. Max, the oldest and leader, would sit by the door longer than the others, his eyes fixed on it like he knew exactly what was happening. And yet, each time Emma slightly opened the door, they greeted her the same way. Quietly, tails wagging slowly, eyes soft and hopeful, nudging her hand as if to say, "We're still here." Deep down, they seemed to sense their time with her might be running out, but none of them showed fear. They stood strong, hiding their sadness, focused only on helping Emma find her way back. The days after that were filled with silence. Emma barely moved from her bed, curled up tightly under the blankets as if trying to disappear completely. Margaret and Walter would gently knock and leave meals by the door, but nothing seemed to reach her. Only the dogs refused to give up. Each morning, they gathered outside her room, sitting patiently. Then, one by one, they began bringing her their leashes, pressing them gently against the door, their eyes filled with quiet hope. At first, Emma didn't react, but something about their patience, their deep, steady loyalty, stirred something inside her. One morning, she finally opened the door. Max stood there, his leash in his mouth, tail swaying slowly, eyes locked on hers. Emma said nothing. She simply reached down, her fingers brushing against Max's head. She took the leash and clipped it to his collar. One by one, she did the same with the others, her hands steady even though her heart felt heavy. Margaret and Walter stood quietly in the doorway, unsure what to say. Their hearts broke and hoped at the same time as Emma led the dogs outside for the first time in days. The park was calm that morning. Dew still sparkled on the grass as Emma walked with the 6 dogs beside her. They moved in perfect step, as though they had done this 1,000 times. People passing by slowed down, whispering in surprise. It wasn't every day they saw a small 5-year-old girl calmly leading 6 big dogs like she'd been doing it forever. Some smiled, others simply stared, but Emma didn't notice. For the first time in what felt like forever, she breathed in the cold morning air, felt the pull of the leashes in her hands, and matched her steps to the steady rhythm of the dogs. With each step, the heavy weight inside her started to lift. Not completely, but just enough. The dogs didn't look back. They walked with quiet confidence, as if saying, "We're still here. You're not alone." The cold breeze brushed her face as they walked deeper into the park, and though Emma still didn't speak, there was a calm around her now, something peaceful in the way she held the 6 leashes, surrounded by her loyal friends. Everything felt normal, until Max suddenly stopped. His ears shot up, his body stiff, eyes locked on something near the lake at the edge of the park. The other dogs followed his gaze, all turning their heads together, silent but alert. Emma looked in the same direction and saw it. A small child, no older than 4, had slipped into the water. There was no one nearby, no parents in sight. The child flailed for a moment, then vanished beneath the surface. Without hesitation, Max lunged forward, his leash slipping from Emma's hand. The others followed instantly, like someone had given an unspoken command. What happened next happened so quickly and so perfectly that everyone who saw it was stunned. Max reached the lake first, diving in without pause. Luna and Rex swam beside him, their powerful bodies cutting through the water easily. On the shore, the other 3 dogs spread out, barking sharply to draw attention and call for help. Under the water, Max reached the child, gently gripping the back of the shirt without hurting him. Luna stayed close, keeping the child steady, while Rex swam behind, guiding them all toward land. It was as if they had rehearsed it. Each dog knew exactly what to do. Years of training by Emma's parents had turned them into more than just pets. They were a team, smart, disciplined, and ready for anything. Gasps rose from the crowd as the dogs reached the shallow edge and carefully pulled the child onto dry ground. Within seconds, people in the park rushed over. One woman pulled out her phone to call for help, while another dropped to her knees beside the crying but safe little boy. Emma stood frozen, her heart pounding. Her dogs came back to her, soaked and shaking, but calm and steady, just like always. Someone nearby whispered, "Those dogs, they knew what to do." Another person added softly, "I've never seen anything like that." In that moment, everyone watching understood. These weren't just pets, they were heroes. For a few seconds, the whole park stood still. Parents hugged their children tighter. Strangers stared in silent awe, trying to take in what they had just witnessed. And by that afternoon, the entire town was talking about it. Someone had recorded the whole rescue. The video showed a tiny girl calmly walking 6 powerful dogs, then those same dogs rushing to save a drowning child. It didn't take long for the video to spread. First it aired on the local news, then it swept through social media. Thousands, then millions, watched. People were amazed, not only by the dogs' bravery, but by how perfectly they worked together. Comments poured in, praising the German Shepherd's intelligence and the little girl's calm strength. But as more of the story came out, the admiration grew deeper. Reporters discovered the truth about Emma, the 5-year-old girl who hadn't spoken a word since her parents died. A girl who might lose the only family she had left. Her 6 beloved dogs. Photos of Emma, small and silent, standing among the tall, watchful dogs, Max, Luna, Rex, and the others, touched people across the country. Hearts broke when they heard she might be forced to give them up because of money troubles. Then something incredible happened. Messages and donations started coming in, slowly at first, then in waves. Total strangers, parents, animal lovers, and even rescue groups offered help to make sure Emma never had to say goodbye to her dogs. It wasn't just kindness. It was determination. A shared belief that the bond between a child and her dogs was worth saving. Margaret and Walter were stunned by the outpouring of support. After so many sleepless nights, after carrying such a heavy burden, help was finally arriving. Neighbors knocked on the door with groceries. Others offered to cover vet bills. Local shops quietly gave money. Emma still hadn't spoken, but inside something was beginning to change. The heaviness she'd carried for so long started to lift. Not just because of the dogs, but because now she knew she wasn't alone. In the days after the rescue, life felt like a dream. Everywhere they went, people recognized Emma and the dogs. Neighbors visited daily with treats and toys. More donations came in, enough to keep the dogs well-fed and healthy for a long time. The worry that had weighed so heavily on Margaret and Walter faded away. But the biggest change happened quietly, deep inside Emma. One peaceful afternoon, when the house had settled into a gentle stillness, Emma sat cross-legged on the living room floor. The 6 dogs lay around her, calm and watchful. For a while, she simply sat there, her fingers running through Max's soft fur. Her grandparents stood nearby, silent, barely daring to hope. Then it happened. A deep stillness filled the room, the kind that wraps around you like a held breath. Emma's lips parted. In the softest, unsure voice, she whispered, "Max." The room froze. Max perked up instantly, ears twitching, eyes focused on her. Beside him, Luna gave a small, encouraging bark. Emma swallowed and spoke again, stronger this time. "Max! Luna! Rex!" She kept going, calling each dog by name, her voice shaky but growing steadier. The dogs responded right away, tails wagging, eyes lighting up, pressing close to her. They knew. Tears filled Margaret's eyes. Walter turned away, wiping his face. For the first time since that terrible day, Emma had spoken. Not out of fear or sadness, but out of love. The dogs circled her gently, some licking her cheeks, others leaning into her, quietly saying, "We're still here. We're not going anywhere." Surrounded by their warmth and the kindness of a community that refused to let her fall, Emma smiled. A real smile, pure and open. And in that moment, the house that once felt cold and quiet felt like home again. Emma's silent world was filled once more, with love, with loyalty, and with voices she thought she'd lost forever. Did this story move you? If Emma and her brave dogs touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, powerful stories of hope and healing.